Hi again. I'm here to respond to some questions that you had in the Romantic period. And after looking through all of your questions, they seemed to fall into two categories. One category had to do with illness, be it syphilis or mental illness, and the composers. And another one had to do with the place of women as composers in the 19th century. And I'll talk a little bit about each, but let's turn first to the problems involving syphilis and other illnesses. Now, during the 1800s, one out of four in Europe suffered syphilis. This wasn't just men, it included women, and unfortunately there were even children, babies born with syphilis in their bloodstream. It was a horrible disease because the spirochetes get into the body and they continue to develop. Once they get into the blood, they can travel just about wherever they want to. They tend to set up shop around the eyes and also in the brain. And typical of late-stage syphilis, you have individuals that go blind and go insane. And so it was not a very pretty disease. It was typically treated by using mercury. Now, mercury, as you know, is a highly toxic substance. They would put mercury into a solution and dip rags into the solution and apply these to parts of the body. Now, some people may have oilier skin than others, so it was kind of difficult to really titrate or measure the amount of mercury that was entering into the body. And so sometimes people suffered the ravages of getting too much mercury. It seems that one of the problems with Schumann was that it affected his arms. He began to lose degeneration of his neuromuscular system in his arms, which added to the crippling of his hands. So it was a very miserable kind of disease to have, and it wouldn't be treatable until the 20th century, sometime about mid-century. Even in the 1930s, mercury treatments were used. Some of you may be familiar with that disgusting, depressing study that was done at Tuskegee back in the 1930s, where African Americans were simply used as guinea pigs in the treatment or the absence of treatment of syphilis. Now, some of you wanted to know how this might have influenced their music. Well, by and large, the composers didn't allow their concern about the disease to affect their style of music. It seems that some of the most emotionally depressed composers, are the ones that addressed their deepest and saddest feelings, were ones who did not suffer from syphilis. So that was not the case. Although during the Romantic period we find that the personality of the artist merges with the work of art. And certainly this is the case in Tchaikovsky, Gustav Mahler's music, and others as well. So the question also of people who had, say, bipolar personality disorder. One student, I think his name is Alexandru Muse, asked a question of what would be the case if these individuals were treated. Would they be able to compose the music that they did? And I think that there would be a difference. We certainly know with Berlioz that when he would reach these extreme depths of depression, he couldn't do anything. When he came out, he would just be in a fever of composing. And I think that that was true for many others. How do you separate out the psychological aspect of the composer from the music that he or she composes? This would certainly be the case of the music of Mahler, the music of Tchaikovsky. All of these composers, their personalities are part of their human and emotional experience. So, yes, indeed, if we would have put Berlioz on lithium, his music would probably be quite a bit more tame. So that's always a question. that I think certainly deserves an answer, and I think we can be pretty safe by saying that their music would have been different if they did not suffer the ravages of mental illness. What about women composers? Well, there were a number in the 19th century. Clara Schumann was one. Felix Mendelssohn's sister, Fanny, was also a very talented composer. And Alma Schindler, who became Mahler's wife about 1901, was also a very talented composer. But these women, well, let's speak of Fanny Mendelssohn and Clara Schumann. They gave up their creative energies to take care of the household, to raise a family. And so they made a choice, a social choice. Now, with Alma Mahler, that was not so much a choice, except Mahler had said, there's only one composer in this household, and it's me. Alma did not take this too kindly. It caused a rift between she and her husband, and it was a source of friction for the 10 years that those two were married. It eventually led to Mahler seeking out Sigmund Freud to deal with this problem of the fallout between he and his wife over his demands on Alma being forced to stop composing. Now, there were other women composers as well, and Amy Beach is another. Truth of the matter is, these women composers did not create a whole lot of music, even though the quality of their music was very good. And of course, this size, which is kind of scratching the surface, one could probably add a woman or two composer and omit a guy composer, and perhaps that will be something that I will take under advisement when I revise this particular course. So thank you for asking those questions. Also, how did society respond to the music being written? Well, there is a wonderful book that was written a few years ago by a man named Nicholas Slonimsky. And this book is published by W.W. Norton. It is called, what is it called? So having to do with a lexicon of musical invective. A lexicon of musical invective. And this book is a compilation of criticisms that were printed in newspapers following the performance of new compositions by Beethoven, by Liszt, by Wagner, and others up through the 20th century. And it is extremely humorous. It'll have you rolling in the aisles if you read it, because these critics did not take too kindly to the new music. They would speak of something that Brahms had written as caterwauling, or cats in heat, many references to animals, and so forth. Actually, this was new music. And when Wagner was producing his operas and Liszt was composing his symphonic poems in the 1850s as part of the new German school, these critics would say, well, perhaps it'll be understood maybe in the 21st century. There were critics, actually, in this country at the turn of the 20th century who could not figure out Beethoven's Ninth. It seemed to be that far advanced for them. Needless to say, Beethoven's Ninth is one of the world's most beloved works, but these were considered new avant-garde pieces, and the composers were seen as, well, writing crazy music. And it took time for the audiences to become familiar with what these composers were saying. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.